Good morning, everyone. My name is Jordan, and I'll be the clerk for today's subcommittee meeting, and I'm pleased to welcome you all to today's meeting of the subcommittee. I'll take the subcommittee through the first agenda items this morning. If anyone intends on recording the public proceedings of this meeting, please make this known now. This is not to prevent you, but to ensure that all parties are aware. Item 1, apologies. We've had no apologies. Item 2, substitute members. There are no substitute members. Item 3, election of a chairman. Can I please ask for a nomination of a chairman today? Thank you very much. And is that seconded? Thank you very much. Councillor English, you are today's subcommittee chairman. After you.
Thank you very much, Jordan. First of all, are there any disclosures by members or officers this morning? No? Case. Item 5, disclosures of lobbying. Have any members been lobbied? Yes, we've all been lobbied. Moving on to item 6, consider whether any item should be taken in private because of the possible disclosure of exempt information. It is my intention to take item 7, the application for summary review, full hearing and review of interim steps at the Hot Pole, Maidstone Road, Nettlestead, Kent, in public. Unless any member wishes to refer to the exempt appendices, at which point the subcommittee will be held in private session due to the possible disclosure of exempt information. So in other words, it's quite possible. To consider the application, the subcommittee will hold its deliberations in private session with the legal advisor in attendance only. Is this agreed? Is this agreed? Thank you. Application 7 then. Application for summary review, full hearing and review of interim steps at the Hot Pole, Maidstone Road, Nettlestead. I will now ask that all persons participating in this morning's hearing identify themselves, starting with the members of the subcommittee. I'm Councillor Clive English. I will be chairing it this morning. To my left,
Councillor David Nagy, Board Member for Pendant Heath. My voice has gone a bit, so I apologise.
and to the furthest left,
Malcolm Mackay. I'm a councillor and chairman of the Licensing Committee, but not of this subcommittee.
our committee clerk,
Jordan, today's clerk.
and our legal advisor,
Helen Ward, Legal Advisor.
Senior Licensing Officer,
Lorraine Neal.
Kent Police,
James Williams, Police Licensing.
and Licence Hold, William Webb, and the other members of the public here, if you would identify yourselves.
Sharice Reid, Bill's partner.
Jackie Bennett.
And could you turn it off again, please? And online, I believe we have Claudine Russell. Are you there, Claudine?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Councillor Russell from London and Yorton Ward, Nettlestead's in my ward, and I'm representing some residents. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Is that everyone? Can I ask that all parties confirm that they have received a copy and are aware of the subcommittee hearing procedure? Okay, I'm seeing everyone nodding. Excellent. The subcommittee will allow all parties to put their case fully and make submissions to the panel within a reasonable time frame. The procedure will take the form of a discussion led by the subcommittee. Any persons in attendance behaving in a disruptive manner may be directed to leave the meeting, including temporarily, after which such persons may submit to the subcommittee in writing any information which that person would have been entitled to give orally had they not been required to leave the meeting. If this is not possible, they may be allowed to speak at the chairman's invitation. I will now ask that all subcommittee members confirm that they have pre-read all the papers and other documentation regarding the hearing, including viewing the CCTV coverage.
Yeah, I can confirm that.
I can confirm I have read all papers.
Thank you very much indeed. I turn now to the licensing officer for her introductory remarks.
Morning, everybody.
Members are being asked to consider the full review for the Hot Pot Inn, Maidstone Road, Nicholstead, Kent, ME18, following the interim steps taken on the 16th of October 2024 to suspend the licence with immediate effect. This followed an application for review received on the 15th of October on the grounds of serious crime and serious disorder, which related to an incident at the premises occurring on the 13th of October where serious injury occurred. Members are now being asked to determine its full decision on the full review, considering all relevant representations which are attached as Appendix 3, the relevant legislation, guidance and policies. Members' options are the modification of the conditions of the premises licence, the exclusion of the sale by retail of alcohol from the scope of the licence, the removal of the designated premises supervisor from the licence, the suspension of the licence. Apologies. And also the subcommittee must review the interim steps taken on the 16th of October 2024 and consider whether those steps are appropriate for the promotion of the licence and objectives. I think that's it, members. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's very helpful. I'm given to understand that Councillor Russell is on a somewhat restricted time slot. So if you'd like to make your remarks now, Councillor Russell. Thank you, Councillor Russell. Do any of the panel members have any questions of Councillor Russell's statement or any observations? Councillor Mackay.
Councillor Russell, could you just clarify the number of residents that wish to see the public house closed and the number which wish to see it remain open?
What would you say, Councillor Russell, to those who say that the horse fair is not even potentially within the control of the applicant or licence holder, but it may well be that Maidstone Borough Council should be looking at this as an issue, but it's not something that hypothetically anyway, that the landlord or the DPS could control because they're not organising the horse fair.
I mean, I would probably say that I feel they're intrinsically linked because the pub is open at the time of the horse fairs and it's known for serving alcohol.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions, or does any of the interested parties want to ask Councillor Russell anything at this stage? No? I only ask because I know we're a bit early in the process, but because of the timetable. In that case, I will go over to the police and ask PC Williams for their opening statement.
Thank you, Chair. Basically, Kent Police did a summary review on the premises of the Hot Pole in relation to an attempt murder and unlicensed activities on the premises on the 12th and the 13th of October this year. I'm not going to go into too much because it's still an ongoing investigation currently. There have been incidents of concern at the venue, which I will outline below as we move through the document that I produced, which has showed the lack of consideration of requirements by the management under the Licensing Act and failures to uphold the licensing objectives and operating in breach of the premises licence and the unwillingness to take on board the advice in relation to these incidents. Kent Police have continued to work with Mr Webb. However, the pub has become a focal point for antisocial behaviour, obstructions and general nuisance certain times throughout the year, which has affected local residents and the wider community. Kent Police now believes that it is an appropriate part of this review process that we request the removal of the designated premise supervisor, Daniel Sutton, as we do not feel that he has appropriate control or management of running of this premises. So I bring you to the first incident to do with the venue. On the Saturday, the 7th of January 2023, I attended the venue in relation to a compliance check. During that visit, the venue obviously was not displaying the licence documents. Whilst I was there, I was met with one of the new owners, which was Mr Porter, and he obviously stated that the other interested business partner was Mr Webb. They were informed about transferring the premises licence into the new holder, and because they hadn't done that, they were issued a formal warning letter in relation to that, which is Appendix 1. I continue to work with the transfer and the operations with Mr Webb and Mr Porter. And then on the 20th of April 2023, Kent Police received notification that the premises licence had transferred into the name of Mr Webb. On Saturday the 24th of June 2023, around 19:24 hours, Kent Police received a call from a member of the public stating that there was a horse fair and the traveller community was at the pub. A member of the public reported obstructions of the highway and those attending were being abusive towards residents and members of the public using the road. On Sunday the 24th of June 2023, around 1:10 Kent Police received a call from a member of the public. The call was in relation to the pub still operating past its hours and was serving people, and there were children seen outside. On Tuesday the 27th of June 2023, I attended the pub in relation to the complaint from a member of the public stating that the pub was operating until 1 o'clock on that evening. I spoke to Mr Porter, who confirmed they were only serving till midnight as per their licence. They were informed at the time that that was incorrect, as their licence did not permit them to the sale of alcohol past that time, and they were sent a warning for unlicensed activity, which is Appendix 2. Friday the 30th of June, I attended the venue for a meeting with Mr Webb to discuss the premise licence moving forward to vary the licence, which would allow the pub to continue to operate to the early hours of the morning. And as a result of that, we would look at some conditions being added to the premises licence, which Mr Webb was quite happy for. Then on Saturday, the 2nd of September 2023, Kent Police received 3 calls from members of the public. The first call was around 17:03 in relation to patrons from the pub abandoning their vehicles, horses and carts across driveways and a general obstruction of the highway. The second call was at 17:45, same again, similar to horse carts. Apparently a car hit one of the horse and traps, which toppled it over. Police did attend that location and were trying to sort out traffic management. And then a third call came in around just after 10 o'clock in relation to concerns of a horse and carts racing up and smashing of glasses outside the pub. Tuesday, the 5th of September 2023, I sent an email to Mr Webb to ask what had happened over the weekend, the number of calls that Kent Police had received, and he confirmed that there was a local horse fair, not obviously connected to the pub, but obviously they visit the pub for their drinks. Then we move into the next year. On Saturday, the 3rd of February 2024, around 3:20, Kent Police received a call from a member of the public that people were in the pub shouting and they shouldn't be in there. On Wednesday, the 15th of May, I sent an email to Mr Webb explaining that sale of alcohol should only take place between the hours of 10 and 2300 and Sunday between 12 and 22:30. There was an issue in relation to a variation of the DPS was being transferred and a new licence had been granted with no consultation, so there was an admin error. So Mr Webb was advised that they should revert back to their normal hours and not the new hours, as they would be unlicensed. Then obviously on the Thursday, the 16th of May 2024, Mr Webb sent an email to me attaching documents in relation to the licence he had been granted, but he was advised it was a mistake and it should never have been issued, which was rectified. On Wednesday, the 5th of June 2024, I sent an email to Mr Webb about discussing about further road closures and contacting KCC just to help Mr Webb in future with the nearby horse fairs, etc. And Mr Webb was asked if he'd submitted the paperwork to vary the licence, which we hadn't received anything yet. On Saturday, 29th of June 2024, Kent Police received 5 calls between 17:01 and 20:56 from various members of the public. The calls were about a large congregation of patrons to the pub with horse and carts racing up and down, causing obstructions, patrons refusing to move, being abusive to members of the public. The police spoke to whoever said they were the landlord, but obviously it was reported were quite rude. I can't actually comment who that was, who was spoken to at the pub, and they said they would contact the licensing as a follow-up. On Saturday, 7th of September 2024, around 2012 hours, Kent Police received a call from a member of the public in relation to ongoing issues at the location, mainly obstructions of the highway and patrons from the pub. On Saturday, 12th of October 2024, Kent Police received 4 calls between 16:19 hours and 18:10 hours from members of the public. This was in relation to large gatherings of patrons from the pub who were causing obstructions to the highway with their vehicles. Police attended to conduct traffic management to ease the problem. I'm going to pause at this part for the 13th, as this is the ongoing investigation that I would probably like to hear in private, if that's okay with the members.
Thank you very much. And did you, in your initial comments, and because it's quite key to the case you're actually making, want to make any reference to the actions you're proposing in terms of conditions and the way forward? Well,
Chair, an appropriate way to deal with it might be to discuss everything apart from the October incident now,
Yes.
and then we'll move into private and we can have a discussion about
Yes.
that in private.
I just wanted, yes, that is what we were going to do for the substantive thing, but I just wanted to know whether you wanted to make any preliminary observation about what you're generally seeking as an outcome.
Chair. Okay, I'll leave obviously that bit for the private. Moving forward, Kent Police have obviously made the following recommendations and have given it serious concern, thought in relation to the seriousness of the offence. However, moving forward, Kent Police feel that the following conditions would be appropriate in relation to moving forward to the running of the operation. We've not gone for revocation of the premises. However, we would like stronger management, obviously the removal of the DPS. So we've looked at conditions around CCTV to cover all areas where licensed activity goes place, a logbook to be introduced at the venue for any incidents at the premises. All persons supply alcohol have various trainings which is listed on the conditions. Challenge 25 be added to the premises. As obviously some of the evidence that I'll produce later on shows underage children on site, which is a breach of the premises licence. Identification, IDs appropriate to be taken, a refusals register of those that are intoxicated, the register to be available for the police and local authority. The premise licence holder or the designated premise supervisor will notify police of any events or where larger than usual attendance. The premise licence holder or DPS will ensure gatherings or events at the premises will be contained within the curtilage of their premises. The premise holder or DPS will ensure that any obstructions or any antisocial behaviour that those persons will be asked to leave immediately from the location and not to return. 4 registered security staff to be employed at the premises. These will be on duty during the event, in addition to further 150 per customers. This will be in consultation with Kent Police. There might be some questions on what we class as an event or where it is, but I'm open to changes on that. And that we've said during these peak events that all persons entering or re-entering should be subject to conditions of searching.
Much, that's very helpful. Right, now, do any of the panel members wish to ask any questions of PC Williams, the applicant, on the basis of what he said? Councillor Mackay?
Yeah, thank you very much. From my point of view, this is the first I've heard of incidents other than what happened on the 12th, 13th of October. And to see the background to it is quite eye-opening, to say the least. Thank you very much for that report and giving us a full picture, a fuller picture. May I ask a question? May I ask a question of Mr. Webb?
Normally we take his statement first, but if it relates to what the police officers said.
Yes. At the previous hearing, we went through a lot of discussion for at the end for you to say that you actually supported the temporary closure. Now, I don't want to go through and waste another 2 hours. You've heard the recommendations from the police. Are you prepared to accept those recommendations? I'm not saying that will be the end of it, but are you prepared to accept those recommendations put forward by the police?
Yeah, I mean, I am prepared to accept the recommendations made by James Williams. I think they're, I can't think of the correct word. I think they're a fair response to what's happened. I mean, there are just a couple of things I would probably like to clear up. Obviously, you're saying you've.
Just a yes or no.
Just a yes.
In terms of anything else you want to say, you will have an opportunity in literally a couple of minutes to make your opening statement, so I suggest you leave it to there if you've got additional. Any questions on this particular bit? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I've just got a couple of questions. Councillor Russell gave evidence of a number of horse fairs that have taken place. and you gave evidence of the times that you've been called. There have been horse fairs where the police haven't been called, from my tallying up of that. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the horse fair is obviously Addington, but obviously they all congregate at the pub. So what I've given there, the list of the calls will be the rough times during that time of year that the horse fairs are taking place.
Thank you very much. And also, you talk, so in your evidence, you sent an email on the 15th of May regarding the hours that they are allowed to trade to. Now, that doesn't seem to be in response to any incidents or anything like that. You've said there was a variation. It sounds a bit like a variation went through that gave them later hours, but it wasn't correctly administered, which means that they may have thought they had later hours. So can you just explain a little bit around why you sent that email on the 15th of May and the time period that they were trading to, and just to clear up any confusion that may have been in the mind of the licence holder regarding their permitted hours? Thank you.
Can I explain? Basically what happened was the licence holder submitted 2 applications. One was to vary the DPS and the other one was to vary the licence. They were received at the partnership, and the confusion happened because of the order the applications were put in the system. So they dealt with the very DPS part, but they put that on after they put on the variation application, which altered all the hours for the premises. And then they dealt with the very DPS, sent the licence out, and that licence pulled through all those hours that had not been agreed yet. And that was spotted a bit later on, and at that point Mr. Webb was advised. So there was a bit of confusion. There was a period of time where he obviously thought that application had been successful.
Okay, thank you. That's clear. What hours did they not have, but thought they did have granted?
I believe the hours were going on to about 2 a.m. Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you. And a question again for PC Williams. The conditions that you've put in, I think some of them are very clear. Some of the conditions which relate specifically to events and perhaps having security, searching, etc., could perhaps be a little clearer to conform with the guidance. And there might be some discussion about that later. But generally speaking, is the opinion of the police that conditions is the way to deal with customer management here, or that the premises should be avoiding certain activities at all? Thank you.
We're not discouraging from the pub being shut or anything like that. It's just we need these conditions to help them run forward in moving forward to prevent disorder, is what we're looking at now.
Thank you very much. I know we'll talk about the other stuff later, so that's all from me. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much. Any further questions at this time on the applicant's original statement? Councillor Russell, you can ask a question yourself if you want to. If you're still with us? No.
No, thank you. I'm good.
Okay, thanks. Just checking. Right. In that case, we move to the licence holder, Mr. Webb, for your initial remarks. Thank you. There were just a few things really I wanted to clear up. Obviously, where James has stated a list of previous calls they've had, and obviously you feel like you've got a fuller picture, I would just like to say on those matters, it does obviously paint things in a much worse light, as in every time that there's been a call and police have ever responded to that call and attended, they've always been happy with either what the problem was and how we're sorting it and how we're dealing with it, or they're happy that it's been possibly an exaggerated call and there's nothing for them to worry about and they've left. Like, for example, one of them I remember you just said was like 22:07 and there was horse and carts racing. The police turned up, there was no horse and carts there, and the lanes are pitch black. And he said, like, I can tell there's nothing in this. Like, sometimes we have neighbours complain. I have neighbours ring me and pretend to be police officers.
Like one of them rang me complaining that his driveway had been blocked. And I said, that's fine. Like I can't see all the way up and down the road from home. If there's something blocked, tell me the registration of the car and I'll get it moved, which we do. But then he rang back telling me he was PC so-and-so and I had to shut the pub immediately, and you get all sorts of stuff like that. So obviously, if I'm getting them calls, I'm sure the police are getting calls like that as well. Like other things, it's just, I suppose what my point is trying to make is it's easy to say things if they haven't got to prove things. Like scooters pulling up at all hours, I don't understand that. Like, there's never been like late night things. Obviously people do live in the pub as well, so there will still be people in the pub talking, maybe upstairs in their own private part, and if they're loud then they can be heard. It doesn't have to be within the pub itself. It doesn't have to be a pub that's open serving alcohol. But I think where there's always been some sort of animosity between a certain part of the community and the pub since I've ever had it, it sometimes feels like there's accusations made or complaints made that aren't true, and the police do follow them up and they come there, and a lot of the times they leave happy. The one main problem we've ever had is when they do come for a horse fair and use our pub, the road is blocked, so we end up 3 of us out there trying to move traffic, move where they've parked, move horses, keep the roadway clear so buses, emergency crew and other cars can fit through. But we spend hours out there, and when the police turn up, they do say to us, there's nothing you're doing there's nothing we could do that you're not doing. We're happy with how you're handling it. If you need any help, let us know. It's never, obviously what you're hearing and reading probably paints a bigger, worse picture than I'd like to see the reality of it. Yeah, even in terms of litter, things like that, we're out there cleaning it. We have people out there during the evening, back in the morning, obviously what you can't see in the dark. Like, we're not irresponsible. We don't just go, oh, everyone turn up, do what you want, let us know when you're finished. We do try our best to manage any antisocial issues or any problems, however small or large they have been. But I just wanted to state that, just so obviously I've read that myself, and reading it feels like a lot worse than what I've ever experienced. That's it.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Webb. Do any of the panel wish to ask Councillor Mackay?
Thank you, Mr. Webb. The conditions which you've said you would accept,
yeah.
I presume that includes the changing of your DPS.
Correct.
Is he currently employed with you still?
Well, at the moment, obviously, where we're closed,
yeah,
no one's working. But yeah, I have spoke to him already, and he's happy for the same thing that I've explained it to him.
There's an awful lot of conditions that the police have asked for. How long would you envisage these changes would take for you to implement? Because until you've implemented them, presumably your licence would remain as is. Is that the case?
I understand. I mean, some of the conditions are already in place anyway. I've got the recordable CCTV, which obviously that's a given. You've seen it yourself. So I've got the refusals register. I've got a logbook. Some more staff, a couple of the staff will need personal licence training. But I think you said there was a 6 weeks on that, wasn't there, anyway, time frame. Security staff, obviously they can be hired in as and when you had an event to plan, but obviously it goes without saying I wouldn't have another, I wouldn't let them come from another fair. If it's easier, I'd close on a day, but I wouldn't have another fair. I mean, there's no way I could ever guarantee that if they turned up for a fair and I allowed them in, I could keep it within the curtilage of the ground of the pub. It's been a problem managing them on the road before, and I wouldn't hold another one.
Sorry, you don't hold the fairs anyway? Yeah. And presumably you wouldn't be applying for extended hours licence? I mean, that was clear from what you were saying, but I just wanted to be explicit about that.
Okay, well, thank you. Councillor Nargi, any questions?
No.
Right.
Made my notes.
Councillor Russell, did you have any questions at this point? No.
Yes, thank you. Yes, Chairman, sorry. I just wanted to thank Mr. Wood for his opening comments, but I wanted to note that a lot of the measures that he mentions there are reactive measures, and I just really wanted to question him, had he ever thought about introducing any proactive measures in advance of some of these events occurring to minimise.
Yeah, so what we've done, I did speak to email James Williams with regards to how I'd go about that. He come back to me and told me to contact KCC Highways, which I did. But the problem is we don't organise or hold these events from ourselves. So once we get knowledge, the first few we probably had maybe a week or so's knowledge of they're going to be using our pub and when the next horse fair was. So certain things, you're correct, are reactive. But we have set up a WhatsApp group with all the neighbours who allowed us to take their mobile numbers to let them know that as soon as we had notification that there was going to be coming to the pub, we could let them know. Also, I applied to KCC for a road closure for not the last one, the one before, and they told me I needed 12 weeks notice and it was a £960 fee. Two things which wasn't possible. Obviously I didn't have the 12 weeks notice myself. Reactive, yeah, also we've tried to see if we could either hire or lend or borrow or anything we could do for the field directly behind the pub, because it has its own access where we could use more as a car parking and horse parking, if you like, so it's off the roadway. The owner of the field let us use it one time. He was happy with how it was left. There was no rubbish, there was nothing else, but I can't remember what it was called. He's in a certain schemes with the government and other stuff, and he's obviously busy. He's got land all up and down the area, so it's not always possible for him to come and move the blockades to let us use it. It's not always convenient for him, so we have used it before, and we do try every time we know there's going to be one. But obviously, part of the problem is, will we get a late notice? We're asking him at late notice, and it's not always possible. So I hope that answers it. I don't know if I missed any part of the question.
No, thank you. You answered it. I suppose I would just come back with, I mean, everything that you mentioned there does indicate my previous conclusion, which is that they do seem to be intrinsically linked. Thank you.
Councillor Mackay, you wanted to follow that up.
I'm a tad confused. I believe previously you suggested that you wouldn't welcome the travelling community on the day of the horse fairs, and now you're talking about how you're going to cope with them being there and avoiding.
I think what if I don't, you don't mind me putting words in your mouth. Mr. Webb said that if other measures weren't working, he would be prepared to close the pub.
Those were measures I've previously tried. That doesn't affect what's going forward. What I said about not letting them come or having the pub closed still stands. I was just in reply to Councillor Russell's question about things had always been reactive and not proactive, and I tried to explain how things had been tried to be proactive, not just only reactive.
Okay, I'm happy to focus on what happens going forward rather than what has happened, although we should be aware of what. I'm not dismissing what happened, because what happened was a very serious situation.
That incident, because we'll have to go into part two, which we'll be doing later. Councillor Nargi.
Thank you, Chairman. So not last time, the time before, you did look into a road closure and how much it cost?
I believe it was £960.
It's about £1,000
Yeah.
because I do something like that myself. So you looked into it to help the organisers of that event,
No,
which it wasn't your event.
No, I looked into it to make life easier and safer for when they are there. If I know they're coming, I try to nullify problems before they happened, off our own back sort of thing. I know they're going to come, so if they're going to come, I try and make it as easy and safe for everyone as possible. Do you want to say anything?
Thank you. I think it might help the subcommittee if you could give them a bit of an overview of who owns the pub, how you manage it. You've been there since early 2023, I understand. So just under 2 years now. So what's your history in the industry and how have you found your experience of running it and who runs it with you? That might help if you could explain some of that to the subcommittee. Thank you.
Okay, I actually took over the pub in 2020 in the first lockdown. Previous experience in the industry was zero, but I wasn't there to run the pub, to be a part of the pub. It was a business I'd set up with management in place. It was an opportunity I thought with COVID and lockdown, by the time people come back out, the world would go back to normal and it'd be a good business to own, but not necessarily day-to-day running of it, anything. So there was, the previous owner was still involved initially to help transition us, and then there was another lady who come to run the pub for us who was on the Rosalind Baker or Barker. She was on the premise licence and a DPS, and it wasn't until she had to leave because of a family illness that it sort of got thrown on my lap a little bit, where I thought, what? Dan Sutton was happy to be the DPS and do the day-to-day running of the pub, but at that point I sort of had to be involved to help him as such. Otherwise I have another business that I work, which is a paint and decorating business, which I've always done. The pub restaurant side of things was, it was meant to be, well, it was really a pub and restaurant that other people managed and run and hopefully brought in an income at some point, but yeah, I'm not sure what else to say.
Thank you. Do you yourself have a personal licence? I know in the interim steps hearing you said you had other members of staff who have a personal licence. One thing the police have asked for is removal of the DPS, and that's something the subcommittee will consider. You would need someone to then take that role to enable you to sell alcohol. So is the intention Mr. Sutton would stay working at the premises but in a different role, or you would have someone else? How do you intend to manage that if that was the decision that the subcommittee make? Thank you.
Yeah, Dan Sutton to be removed his DPS. I do have a personal licence. Other members of staff have personal licences. Daniel Sutton, I think he's quite happy to not be a part of the pub no more anyway. I think he's got himself another job. He's working nights somewhere, I'm not sure where. So that wouldn't be an issue with that. In terms of DPS, I mean, in all honesty, it's something I'm still bouncing back and forward in my own head, whether it's something I even would want to move forward with after everything that's gone on, or if it's, yeah, I don't have the answers to that as such yet, and I wouldn't obviously open it without a new DPS and things sorted, but I'm not sure. I'm really in two minds what to do at the moment, whether to possibly give the keys back, to reassign my lease, or give it another go. I'm just worried. I've invested a lot of money into it anyway, and I think there's always been a historic problem with whatever the problem is with the neighbours since I first ever opened it. I've never had no local support as such, other than a handful of residents who use it. And I think after this, if I was to go back in, I'm going to have to reinvest. But just from the financial side of things, how deep would I get into it? So at the minute, there's a lot bouncing around my head of options going forward and what to do and how to do it, sort of thing.
Thank you very much. I can appreciate that. Yes, yeah. So you explained at the beginning that you took over from someone. Was that Mr. Porter?
No,
previously?
sorry, Mr. Porter took over with me.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So you took over from someone else.
I took over from Mark Gibbs.
Okay. And ultimately, is this a tenanted or leased pub?
Lease.
Okay. One thing the police have asked for as well about the conditions, if I could ask you briefly about conditions, obviously not talking about anything specific about October. They've asked for some specific things relating to different type of trading events. So you'd need to think about security, searching, how to manage customers, and how you would risk assess or deal with that. Is that something that you've said about perhaps not having the support in place? Is that something that you would be able to achieve and find the support to help you to adhere to those conditions if the subcommittee imposed them?
Yeah, I mean, I've already, other than today, of course, I've already spoken to James about certain things, and I've always worked with James. So any advice he's had or any right direction you can point me in, I've always listened to anyway. But if there was, or especially after this, if there was anything, a party or wedding or whatever was to be organised as such, the first person I would call would be James to clarify everything, to see what I need to do, to see what he's happy with, to make sure everything was how it should be. I don't ever want to find myself in this position again. That's all.
Just to clarify, Mr. Porter is your business partner.
Yeah.
Would it be better to describe him as a sleeping partner, or a backseat partner, whatever? I mean, I'm not denigrating his role. I mean,
yeah. Mr. Porter used to live locally, so he was as much involved or as uninvolved as I was at the time. We sort of left it to the management to run. It was something we basically set up together as a business. He had one business, I had one business, and we set that one up together. But a few years ago, he moved to Bromley, so he's less and less involved or interested as such.
So, definitely a sleeping partner, shall we say? And
one that's hard to wake up.
You are clearly in two minds of how you wish to go forward, but I presume, and you would wish to see your licence go forward, even with conditions, because if you wish to dispose of the inn,
yeah,
it would need a licence, correct? Is that?
Of course, yeah.
So you haven't yet made up your mind whether it's you that goes forward with it,
yeah,
or another person
yeah,
implements the recommendations of the police.
Yeah,
that's if this committee accepts what the police.
Yeah.
Because we have other options, of course.
Of course, yeah.
Yes, is that clarify the situation?
If you don't want to, obviously we consider the facts of whether a licence should be in place or not with whatever conditions. Whoever implements it is not necessarily part of that consideration. Right.
Mrs. Bennett has put a representation.
Yes, I was just about to ask Mrs. Bennett if she had any comments that she wished to make at this stage.
I really wanted to speak on behalf of those who couldn't speak up for themselves, couldn't come to the meeting.
Would you speak just a little nearer the microphone? Thank you.
Also, I'd like to add that I am a parish councillor and church warden and lay minister, but I'm speaking entirely independently as a resident of Nettlestead Green and a user of the pub. And I just felt that someone needs to speak up for the residents of the village who are unable to attend Claudine's meeting for various reasons. Some were not invited because they lived at the other end of the village. Some are elderly. For many of these people, the hot pole is their lifeline. They can catch the bus from Wateringbury at the other end of the village, get off opposite the pub, and go in for a cup of tea, bit of company, something to eat. The children obviously come in or have come in. I hold my hand up to that because we did organise a summer play scheme which worked very well. We've had a lot of people come in with carers who've got dementia, and they like to come in and they can have a bit of peace and quiet in the pub, or they can interact with other people. Their carers can relax. And we found it to be very variable, where they can mix. The older people come in for their chatterbox club, have about 25 people. Really, what I'd also like to add is that a number of comments have been made at the meeting. A lot were very valid. Some were made by people who've never put a foot inside the door. I think quite clearly were gossip, hearsay and exaggeration. I've probably spent a lot more time, this is bad to say, I know, but I've probably spent a lot more time in the pub than they have. And it would be a shame for those of us who really want to use the pub if it were to close. It's a real community hub. Okay, the horse fairs were a little ill-advised. We have tried to help by trying to help with the traffic management, etc. Soaking wet last time, it poured hard. But I would just like to speak for those who can't speak up for themselves, obviously because they didn't go to the meeting. And also I'd just like to say that I do think there is a degree of prejudice in the village, which I think is clearly unacceptable, but it's there, and we were trying actually very hard to try and break that down. And I would like to see that work continue because we do need to all work together. There is room in that pub for all people. There's a snug, there's a games room, there's the bar, there's a conservatory. If you really don't want to sit with somebody, you don't have to. You can move to a different part. So, and I would like to actually continue to work against this prejudice. It's Remembrance Sunday coming up. Our forefathers fought for freedom for people and against oppression, against persecution, and it seems to be happening all over again. I feel that we've learnt nothing, and I really would like to be able to carry on this work with Mr. Webb, because he's not spoken up for himself and said the cooperation he gives to the village, the help he gives to the village, and you know, everybody's sort of seeing the wrong side of everything, and I feel it's important that everybody knows that a lot of good work does go on there.
Thank you very much, Councillor Nagy. I think you had a question.
So, Mrs. Bennett, what you're saying is it's a local asset and a hub for local residents, and apart from incidents like this, you would say it's well run.
Yes, I would. It's a very good local asset, and I just wish the local people would actually use it more. We organise events and they don't go. And it would be very, you know, we would love to see more people come. We've put a lot of time into organising efforts for, with the Queen's Jubilee, we had the King's Coronation, we've had VE Day events, and we have Santa's Sleigh, various events during the year, and we've always had utmost cooperation from Mr. Webb, from Mr. Porter, from Dan Sutton, and we've had some really nice occasions up there, some good memories.
Thank you. It's not a question as such. It's a procedure point which I do have to make. The application for the review was advertised properly, and any person can make a representation. The representations that have been made are those which are included in the evidence for the subcommittee to consider, and Ms Bennett is speaking on personal capacity on behalf of herself and not on behalf of those other residents. We haven't had notification that she is speaking on behalf of anyone else. Thank you. Thank you. He has not made a representation and he hasn't notified his attendance. The regulations do allow questions of him from the subcommittee if the subcommittee are in agreement to that.
Is it on? Yes, okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll introduce myself. My name's Peter Hen. I'm a resident of Nettlestead Green. I live virtually opposite the pub. I've owned the property since 2003, lived there permanently after retiring in 2012. I used to be a licensee, a pub landlord in Maidstone for 27 years. I was past chairman of Maidstone and Mid-Kent Licensed Victuallers Association on 2 occasions. I past president of the Kent Federation of Licensed Victuallers in their centenary year in 1997. My pub was the Walnut Tree in Tunbridge Road. Some of you may be familiar with it. It was very popular with postmen in the days. I've used the pub, the Hot Pole, as I say, since we bought our property in 2003. I know what it's like to run a pub. It's had 4 different landlords in the 21 years that I've owned the property opposite. I'm a pub person, my wife's a pub person. Having run the pub for 27 years, we are definitely pub people. There's lots of other pub people. I'm 78 years of age now. There's a neighbour of mine who's 82. Him and I often pop over the pub for a few beers. We used to go as a neighbour, 4 of us in the neighbourhood, go over there on a Friday evening. Now, there have been some people saying about, I don't know, noise in the garden. You'll always get noise in the pub garden. That pub's been there since the 17th century. There's bound to have been noise. Noise out the front of the pub, that's down to the smoking ban. People have to smoke. If they want to smoke, they go out the front of the pub and smoke. Where they can be monitored, they wouldn't go out into the garden at the back in the winter. It's far better they go out the front and do it. As regards other problems in the pub, in the 21 years that I've been in there on a pretty regular basis, I've only seen 1 instance, and that was a previous landlord, and that was dealt with quite quickly. I've got to say, I don't agree with the horse fairs. It's a bridge too far as I'm concerned for our little village. I don't even think we're a village, I think we're a hamlet. There aren't enough properties in it to be called a village. When we bought our property in 2003, one of the reasons we bought it is because there was a pub over the road. When you get elderly, you want to be able to pop over to the village pub. I wish there was more than one pub. I wish there was a shop in the village, but there's not. We've just got the pub. Jackie does a superb job with a warm space action she takes there for elderly people. We've been there. Father Christmas turns up at Christmas time, etc. My grandchildren have been over there. My great-grandchildren now go over there. So if it ever came to disposing of the licence and shutting the licence down, I would totally object to that. Bill has conveyed to me that he's prepared to not put on another horse fair. I think he's virtually learnt his lesson, and I fully support him in continuing running the pub. But as a pub, as a local pub, and the old saying goes for local people, and as Prince Charles once said, who's now King Charles, the pub is the hub. And it is the hub. It's just unfortunate the more members of our community don't use it on a regular basis. But that's goes for a lot of village pubs. We've seen village pubs close on a regular basis because it's not being used by the residents. But they soon kick up a stink if it's all of a sudden, you know, the pub is shut down, and they go, well, our pub's shut down. Well, that's because you didn't use it. You don't have to spend a fortune in a pub. It's a place of meeting people. It's a place where the community actually gets together. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll keep it short and brief and just summarise it. So in relation to Kent Police's response is we have not gone for revocation on this licence. We have continued to work with Mr Webb and still continue to work with Mr Webb. Obviously there has been failings under the Licensing Act, which is quite clear from what I've submitted, breaches of the licence, unlicensed activities. So in relation to that and moving forward, Kent Police's position and that we feel continuing to move forward that we would like to see the following conditions as per earlier that I read out added to the premises licence to assist in the management of the pub continuing to operate and more safely for not only Mr Webb and local residents but for future events coming up. And that is my closing remarks. Thank you.
No, I've got nothing to add to anything I've previously said.
Just to really add to my previous comments that it is a really valuable community asset and we need it.
Thank you, Chair. We briefly touched on this, but one of the options available to the licensing subcommittee is to amend the conditions of the licence, among other things. And the police have put forward some conditions, which are in the papers, which I know you've seen. And we've discussed briefly perhaps some modification to those conditions, perhaps focused more on what the council's policy says with regards to knife crime, so looking at risk assessments, children on the premises, measures to prevent further disturbance, not just as part of events, but as part of day-to-day trading. And is that something that you would you have any comments on that if that's a decision that the subcommittee decides to make? Thank you.
I would literally be happy to work alongside whatever comments are made or whatever conditions are put in place. However I can help, I'm happy to.
That would, in effect, am I right, formalise when children could possibly attend the public house, because at the moment they cannot under any circumstances. Is that correct?
Thank you. There is a condition on that. We're actually two slightly outdated conditions on the licence. Nonetheless, they are conditions of the licence. There are two ways that you could deal with this if this is something you're minded to do. Either you add into the condition about risk assessment that the presence of children on the premises is to be risk assessed, and that risk assessment sets out how you allow children on the premises. Or you put a specific condition on the licence which says, for example, children under a certain age cannot be on the premises after a certain time. Perhaps we could ask Mr Webb and the police if they have any comments to make on those two options, whether how you would feel about a condition that restricted children after a certain time. And by children, we may want to say under 16, because that's what tallies with the law on children on the premises. Or do you have any comments? Thank you.
Yeah, the only probably comments to make to that would be how it would affect one, like community things that we do, such as like Father Christmas sleigh, where we buy the presents he brings up for the children, and that would be after. Well, that's an evening event. Obviously, it comes lit up sleigh in the dark as such. Obviously, there's the only concern I'd have as a business, as well as trying to keep things how what we're talking about, is how do you maybe attract the local families from the village, say to a Halloween party. Like, for example, we normally do stuff through the afternoon for the children, and the families stay for a party in the evening, say. Or how would you attract families for, say, like a New Year's Eve or those sorts of things? But it's just how you can implement it to.
Sounds like we should do the risk assessment, and it should follow from that rather than a blanket time.
You need to remember as well that the restaurant's open for lunches on a Sunday. Families obviously bring their children for that, so, and also in the week for lunches, so they would need to be there for that.
I think it sounds to me like we need to work through this, and it will be led by the risk assessment, and imposing a blanket time condition might just be rather inflexible and clunky. So that's my initial take on that. Councillor Knight.
I'd just like to thank local residents for coming today, because part of this committee is to hear all the local residents' views. So to take the time to come in, it's appreciated. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Because this is a summary review, the subcommittee are also going to consider the interim steps that apply. So for the purposes of time, you may wish to take submissions on the interim steps at this stage so that you can make your decision on the interim steps when you make your decision alongside the full review, in which case you would ask the police and Mr Webb for their comments on the interim steps.
Well anticipated, because that was indeed where we were shortly going to go. Thank you. As there are no further comments on this part of the main hearing, if you'd like to call it that, any comments at this stage on the interim steps that we took, starting with the police?
From the police's point of view now, that I think moving forward, I've got no other objections to the pub reopening. I think obviously moving forward, we just need to look at some stronger measures to promote it, but apart from that, I've got no further problems for them being lifted.
I presume, Mr Webb, given your comments at the interim hearing, that you were in agreement with the interim steps at that time. Are you still in agreement with the interim steps that were taken? Any further comments? No, didn't think so. Can you confirm whether there are any other further matters to be raised or resolved on either the full hearing or the interim review?
No, I think you have everything you need at this stage.
Excellent. In that case, Councillor Mackay.
Can I, just so I understand this, so until those interim measures had been put in place, the hop stays closed?
Well, no,
Is that the situation?
No,
Or
right.
could you clarify that?
Right. I could, but I think the legal officer wants to first. So.
Thank you, Chair. Summary reviews are a slightly strange situation whereby the decision that you make on the full review now will take effect until the review is fully determined. If Mr Webb or any other party appeals the decision that you make today, then the situation falls back to what you set as the interim steps today. That means if you weren't to set interim steps today and the decision you make is appealed, then the licence would revert to how it looked before the decision was made today until that appeal is dispensed with, which will take a very long time. Appeals do take a long time. So the purpose of resetting the interim steps is that will say that those steps will be what happens to the premises licence from now, from the end of this hearing, until such time as the determination of any appeal, if there is an appeal. If there is no appeal, then the full decision will just take effect. So your options really with the interim steps are to remove them entirely, so the licence reverts back to how it previously looked. You could, if your decision on the full review today is to change conditions, you could impose new interim steps which mirror the decision that you make today, or you could continue with the existing interim steps, which is that the licence is suspended, and that will continue if there is an appeal until the appeal is determined. Thank you.
Yes, is that clear again, Councillor Mackay? Yes, excellent, good. Everyone else clear? Good, excellent. In that case, we will close the hearing, and the subcommittee members and the legal officer will enter into a discussion to deliberate on our recommendations, our decision, and we will return half an hour.
I would say till
Yeah, 12:30. We'll return at 12:30 and announce our decision. And I'm sure that any of the local pubs would welcome your custom in the meantime. Good afternoon. Thank you everyone for patiently waiting whilst we work through this quite complicated decision. I would like to announce that the subcommittee has reached a decision, which I shall read out in a minute. I will just say that you will receive a copy of the written determination in due course, but I will read out the summary now. The decision for the full review is to 1. Remove the designated premises supervisor. B. Amend the conditions of the premises licence as follows. A. Remove the existing embedded conditions. B. Add conditions 1 to 8 proposed by the police relating to CCTV, logbooks, training, Challenge 25, identification and the refusals register. And C. To add 2 new conditions as follows. The premises licence holder will maintain a risk assessment which relates to trading generally at the premises, along with specific reference to any events taking place at the premises. The risk assessment is to be reviewed at a minimum of once per month. The risk assessment and records of its review are to be kept on the premises and made available for inspection by the police or licensing authority on request. The risk assessment will include whether SIA registered security staff are required for any trading sessions, and if so, the numbers of staff and time for them to be on duty. A policy concerning the searching of customers entering the premises, and whether people under the age of 16 are to be permitted on the premises for any trading session, and if entry will be restricted, the times beyond which under 16s will not be permitted. An external area management plan will be in place dealing with customer use of external areas. The plan will be kept on the premises and all staff must receive training regarding the plan. The plan shall be made available for inspection by the police or licensing authority upon request. The decision on the interim steps is to mirror the changes to the licence imposed by the full review. The written decision, as I said, will be circulated shortly and will include the full reasons and matters considered by the licensing subcommittee, along with how a party can appeal the decision should they so choose. And at that point, we reach the end of the hearing. Just simply thank everyone for their participation on whatever side of the argument it's been today and for taking the effort and trouble to engage.
Thanks, Chair.
Close the hearing.